Hello all, welcome to the first ever episode of Urbn Desi's Be You, Be Excellent podcast. One of the goals of Urbn Desi, outside of pushing Desi Inspired streetwear, was to celebrate the brown excellence we saw around us every single day. And with that, there's nobody that I think should launch this other than my first guest, who is a creative, a friend, and somebody who's been like a brother to me for about 10 years now. Kunj Vyas. How you doing, man?
Yeah,
What's going on?
A lot of nice words.
Yeah. So in this podcast, we're gonna get into everything from music to where Ohio ranks as a state, and into the town that made both of us, into medicine, into different things that we just observed throughout our time here. So first thing I want to get into is, hopefully everyone saw my Instagram post.
Yeah.
That whole experience. Talk me through what you kind of said to me and what kind of transpired.
Yeah, so originally we were at this place called Cane's, and it's a southern fried chicken spot. And so we went in there to get some food, and we're the only brown people in this restaurant, the only Indian people, only South Asians. So of course, right, when you went to the line, to make it easier, you told them your name was Ian, right, when they asked for a name for the order. And when they were calling out the orders and they said Ian, I was confused, when we went over there. So, we were just talking, I was just saying, you were talking about this concept of self-hate, how, people try to, step back away from their culture instead of embracing all of their heritage and things like that. So I was just gonna say, you gotta embrace your name. That's who you are, that's what your parents named you. So instead of Ian, I'm Urbn, bro. You're a first generation, Bengali citizen, or Bengali American citizen here. So yeah, you just gotta, embrace it.
I think that that whole instance and just we've seen a lot of that while we've been in Ohio. So full disclosure, I've been in Ohio for a month now, right?
Yeah.
But I think we assume discrimination before we're discriminated against, which is a very interesting thing. So for example, we just went to the Michael Kors thing, right?
Yeah.
And obviously three brown guys walked into the thing. Obviously Subin, who's back there, is here as well, right? We all saw that, and then we immediately after we left, we just talked about it. We're like, damn, we were surprised that the woman didn't discriminate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She kind of treated us.
That's what we were talking about, right? So back home in Jersey, if you see someone random coming around the corner, there's a good chance that they're not white. It could be white, Hispanic, Indian, black. It could be any race, any ethnicity. Whereas when you come over here, you're more. In Jersey, you don't really think about the fact that you are South Asian. It just kind of is. Everyone is just intermingled.
Yeah.
Whereas when you come here, you're cognizant of your that and. It doesn't necessarily mean that
you feel more like a minority.
It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is racist or everyone is watching you. But certainly, when you're the only person there, sometimes it does get to you a little bit, and you feel that.
What does that say though? That that's our go-to assumption.
Yeah, I don't know, that's more or less us. We're also putting our own insecurities about how we fit into the country onto other people. So we don't know exactly what's going on in their minds.
Do you think that's driven by an insecurity of being?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure because even throughout my short tenure here in Columbus, there have been a few incidents that you become just more cognizant of the fact that you are brown, you're a little bit different, and especially the way things are moving, in just the greater world.
Yeah, I wonder now is it bad that we change our actions based off of these assumptions about people, right? For example, we were parking the other day, right?
Yeah.
And we saw we were gonna park it in front of somebody's house, and it was just a family of white people, right? And we specifically backed up just so we didn't park there, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, we literally just went out of our way to not park in front of the white person's house, right? Which was, I don't know, it was interesting.
4th of July, they were just grilling outside. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's just small things, it's subconscious in a way.
Yeah.
You're not, yeah.
I also think it's a luxury because of where we came from, right? Because you described how being in Jersey, but I don't think it's just all of Jersey. We came from one of the most diverse
just
towns
Jersey within it. Yeah, within
Jersey
itself.
period, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think our high school was 25%, 25%, 25%.
Yeah, 25% black, 25% white, 25% Asian, 50% Hispanic, 10%
Other, yeah. And then
that's the breakdown as well.
Which is an insane breakdown of a school, right? So I think we're more just acute and aware of things that are around us in terms of racial. It's interesting, but I think in the short time that I have been in Ohio, I feel outside of just culture being different from I think like sentiments towards like what goes on in the world, right? I think everyone's a little bit more, I want to say like polished in terms of like, polished is such a bad word, like just like more aware of how they intermingle throughout, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you know, you always see. All right, so one kind of short aside that I have is, I think I was telling you this one story. My freshman year, it was me and two of my roommates, all of us Indian, and this was not at OSU, but it was in the suburbs at my aunt's house. And you know, it was late at night. We were trying to walk over to, you know, get some fast food. Everything was closed, so we were trying to walk through the drive-through. You know, just some ignorant stuff. But anyway, we were trying to cross the street, and then we got into a little, you know, a little awkward situation where the car was trying to get past us, and you know, it was like a little. We were trying to cross, they were trying to go, and as we were crossing, then the car started going, and then I went to the other side and let the car go. So you know, they were just like looking at us very weirdly, right? So it ended up being that they called the cops on us, right? And I remember telling my friends, you know, because we were walking, I see the same car talking to the sheriff's van in the middle of the parking lot on the other side, empty parking lot. And the sheriff's van, I tell my friends, like, just be ready. The cops are definitely gonna pull up on us right now, so just be ready. And these cops just very aggressively, you know, pull up on us. The grills are right here, like the car stopped this close to our faces, and you know, then they were, you know, asking us where are you guys going, just being very aggressive in the way that they're questioning us. And in the end, they said, you know, the only place that's open is Donato's. Go to Donato's. And you know, in that situation, we felt pressured, like, all right, just go to Donato's, we'll get our food.
Yeah.
And it just, you know, it didn't feel right. So we ended up going to Donato's, and the cops actually follow us there. So after we order our food, we sit down, completely empty restaurant, there's no one there. They sit right next to us, table right next to us, and they're just, you know, intently watching us the whole time as we're waiting for our food. I know it's kind of like some intimidation.
You think it's just like,
I
do you think
really
it's
know.
intimidation, or like, let's actually like break this down. Like, do you think it's intimidation, or do you think it was like actually they were trying to catch you guys slipping on something?
I don't know. It could be anything. But you know, it just when things like that happen to you, and you know, other people don't describe this kind of scenario.
Yeah.
This is, you know, and it happens to be that all of us are Indian.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, and the fact that somebody called the cops on us.
Yeah.
In the first place, just, you know, for crossing the street.
Definitely.
Pretty much.
Definitely.
And but yeah, see, the thing is, in this situation, I was like, all right, you know, if they're gonna sit there, what do? Talk baseball. So I just started bringing up, oh, the Yankees are playing this, you know, who, you know,
I like how that's the
it was,
playoff.
I think it was in the summer, so I was talking about, you know, All-Star break, and I was saying, you know, home run derby, and you just talk about that, you try to fit in, yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that's a little bit of that, you know, I wouldn't say it's self-hate, but any situation like that, just talk baseball, you'll be good, promise you.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, it's. I think like just like based off of, like working in Ohio now, like I've noticed that like everyone kind of like skirts around, like it just talks about very like generic. I mean, that's like a lot of workplaces, right? But I think because I want to say like the majority of like the company that I work at is like everyone in the office at least is like I want to say like 95% like like white, like which is. At first it's like different because like just not being used to it, especially like going to Rutgers, right? Like not seeing that. But like, how do you think like you dealt with that transition? Like coming from like Jersey to like Ohio. So I'm only here for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You've been here what, like 3 years now.
Yeah.
So like, how was that transition initially?
So you know, so here's the thing, right? You know, when you're in New Jersey, you know, the average person, if you have an encounter with the Indian person, right? They, you know, if say you have a bad situation, a white person has a bad encounter with an Indian person, or you know, someone of South Asian descent, or any other minority, their opinion of the race will not be defined by that encounter because they meet so many other people of the same descent later on. You know, just like in everyday life. Whereas over here, sometimes those people will not meet another brown person, right? So like their kind of whole idea of what your race could be is kind of based off of short, simple interactions that you have.
Yeah.
So you always have to be aware. That's why.
Do you think that's a pressure on you?
I think it's pressure. I think for me, it's fine anyway. Naturally, I'm polite.
Mm-hmm.
I always use manners, and I think that always catches them off guard. You always say please, thank you, you're welcome, like, you know, have a good day, things like this, and you know you can tell.
Yeah.
Small things change.
I think that in itself, like obviously, like this is a problem that like people have spoken about, that like no one person should have to carry the flag for their like religious denomination, their ethnicity, right? Like it shouldn't be that like you are the face of your religion, ethnicity, what have you, because that's not realistically, that's not a liability that people.
Yeah, you know, it's not an ideal situation, but you know, truth of the matter is, you know, that's how it ends up being. So you have to, you know, just proceed with that in mind.
Yeah.
And it's fine. You know, that's what happens. That's life. You know, I'm sure if we went to South Asia, right, and you put a white person there, they're still going to be discriminated against. They're going to be looked at differently. it's the same thing can happen anywhere else.
But is
So,
that
it's not necessarily a burden, but it's just I want my people to be respected everywhere we go, and so it's kind of a matter of pride.
hmm I feel like that's like a false comparison in a way, no? Like apples to oranges, because you said put somebody of like white in South Asia, right?
Yeah.
But like realistically, like America doesn't have like an ethnicity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is the land, realistically, the land of immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Native Americans
Yeah.
excluded from that, right? It's built up of basically every part of the world,
Yeah.
right? So like I don't think that's like a
But I can say like, all right. So for example, in Gujarat, right, there's this kind of community of people from Africa. I believe they're from West Africa actually.
Mhm.
But they migrated maybe 3-4 generations ago.
Yeah.
They've been living in Gujarat, right? Like in their own kind of villages, in their own communities for a long time, 3-4
Mhm.
generations. Perfectly, they're speaking perfect Gujarati. No accent. It's indistinguishable from someone
Mhm.
else. The only thing is that they're black, right? They have black skin.
Mhm.
Still, they get discriminated against, even though that they've been a part of this land for
Mhm.
4 generations.
I mean
So anywhere you go, like just small
there's some,
differences.
100%.
Yeah.
And that in itself brings up like that's just a human, I think, thing that like people just have, that some people like discrimination, hate in their hearts for whatever reason, right? Because you brought up like a segment of Gujarat in general, right?
Yeah,
But let's
that's fine.
break it down even simpler. Have you ever like I've always like joked around about it, and like not joked around, but like I've seen like aunties like when people are trying to get married,
Yeah.
like talk about like oh like
Oh, she's a little bit too dark.
she's a little bit too dark for him,
Something
right?
like that, yeah.
Or like, oh, she's like, oh, he's like when they describe somebody who is attractive,
Yeah,
it's because they're lighter
that's a
skin.
problem within itself within India.
Yeah.
Like how one can argue it's from it's remnants of the British Empire being
Yeah.
there, and they're trying to assimilate more into British culture because that's highbrow.
Yeah,
So that's the difference between highbrow, lowbrow, like that kind of thing.
yeah. So that in itself is a pretty prevalent issue, right? Like
Yeah.
I've seen so many people like disqualify like potential like marriage candidates,
Yeah.
like when aunties are trying to arrange their marriages because of like, oh, he's too dark,
Yeah.
or oh, she's too dark.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like we can't speak about it just because of our background, because honestly, like women probably have it like worse in
Oh,
that
yeah, for sure.
regards, right? Because like men are always allowed to make that gap up through
Yeah.
wealth or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But it's really hard for like aunties to like overlook like a woman being like darker.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, sometimes they'll discount your success on the
100%.
through intelligence, through wits, and all
100%.
that. They'll discount that by looking just at
Yeah.
the superficial.
Another part of the conversation that I would want to ask you about, so like, I know we talked about this before, like off camera, but
Yeah.
like, caste systems exist,
Yeah.
right? In Bangladesh, it's a certain way, right? And India obviously has a pretty prevalent caste system,
Yeah.
right? Do you think that is still prevalent today? On the way people, like, let me rephrase, like the way people, I guess, like place importance upon it?
Yeah, I have a lot of mixed opinions on this matter. I
Okay.
think that on this topic, it needs its own kind of talk. There's a lot that goes into it, a lot of history,
Yeah.
a lot of imposing from
Mhm.
the British. So the British are kind of impacting the caste system as
Yeah.
well.
Without
Yeah,
like the
it's-
historical,
I'm
do you
sure-
think it's still prevalent?
I think, for example, I know for a fact, like my family doesn't, like my parents have taught me, yes, we have a caste system, but that doesn't mean in any way. So we're Brahmin, right? That doesn't mean in any way.
Brahmin, just for clarification for the audience, is the
It's the priestly class.
okay.
So, but you can easily say that, right? Nowadays, many Brahmins are not keeping up with the ancient
Yeah.
literature, the Vedas, anything like that. So I don't know if you can even
Distinguish anymore.
yeah. I mean, because people don't stay. There's still discrimination against lower classes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think I don't know as much about the topic in India
Mhm.
to make a fully educated.
Do you think it's prevalent in the U.S. though? Because like
I
I'm
think,
asking because like
you can tell by last name, especially for Gujaratis. You
Yeah.
can tell right by last name whether someone is all the different castes. It doesn't. Usually people will say you should marry within caste,
Mhm.
right? Like ideally. So my parents, they don't really care who I marry, right?
Mhm.
But ideally, I know ideally, it'd be nice if I had a nice Gujarati Brahmin girl, right?
I think your parents are like I don't want to say exception, right? Because your parents are super like cool,
Yeah.
understanding, right? But like I feel like for a lot of like
Yeah,
South
yeah.
Asian families, I think it's still
Yeah.
pretty.
I think
like,
it's
distinct.
hard to break through kind of like that generational.
Yeah.
It's ingrained within it, you know.
Yeah. So I think over time, hopefully,
Yeah.
the goal is that like that won't appear
Yeah.
anymore, right? Because realistically, like I think at some level, like the generation before us, right, like my parents' generation, right, they still somewhat care.
Yeah.
Like in my family, like I know, like like for us, like Chaudhary is like the high, like back in like the colonial days, right? Like the British, like the Chaudharys were like the landowners, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So like for my parents, they still hold that. Like my dad, like holds
Yeah,
that
of course,
name,
my dad.
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Holds that name,
Yeah.
like like you know what I mean? But
But
I
see,
feel
for,
like
for us, it's like my dad, so we're a Brahmin, right?
Yeah.
That means you never cheat, you never steal, never do anything dishonorable.
Yeah.
So you have to hold yourself to a higher standard.
Mhm.
So don't look at it in terms of, because I'm Brahmin, I'm better than other people. Look at it that you always need to hold yourself to a higher standard.
Yeah.
Because that's just, it's in our blood. You're kind of almost forsaking your fathers before you.
Yeah, and that in itself brings an interesting like scenario of when these are realistically the first times like our parents were the first people to bring like these names
Yeah.
over to this side of the
Yeah.
world, right? Realistically, so like the same way we look at like what's a really common last name in America. I don't know, like Smith, Jones, right?
Yeah.
Like common last names. That hopefully the goal is like eventually over time that like names like Chaudhary, names like Vyas, like they are ingrained within
Yeah.
the American like
Yeah.
subculture in
That's,
general,
yeah.
right? That's the
Yeah.
goal, right? Which tying back to our beginning thing is why it probably is important to always take pride in your name, right? Actually, random question: do you see yourself giving your child a quote unquote like South Asian name?
Oh, for sure, 100%.
Yes?
No doubt. Yep.
Interesting.
No doubt. I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah.
I like thought about it, right? Like, cause I see like the pros and cons of both ways,
Yeah.
right? Cause I've lived with the cons, I think, right? But I've also lived like, I think because of I had that name, like even though like like first generation here, everything, right? Seeing, like I don't know, like it gave me like a tie to my culture in some way, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no escaping that I am like of South Asian descent, right? Like my name is Urbn, right? Like I could never pass off as like being whatever, like at least from a name perspective. But then the con is like I guess the pro of not having that is like it's probably easier for them to function. The teachers probably don't fuck up their names.
So a little bit unrelated, but still related. One of the things that it's kind of almost a pet peeve, right?
Yeah.
When so I don't know. This varies from person to person. So I think when white people introduce themselves, oh, I'm American. So actually, I had one incident. I think freshman year. Actually, one of my really good friends. We were talking, right, and she was saying, "Oh, so do you consider yourself an American?"
Yeah.
Like she came up and we were talking and she said, you don't consider yourself American though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just taken aback, like, wow, you would think that I don't think I'm American. I've lived here my whole life. I was born here. I've been to India 2 or 3 times. English is the language. That's my mother tongue. Mother tongue. So I don't know. I watch baseball.
I watch baseball.
I watch
football.
what else
I don't watch
I
cricket.
eat apple
like,
pie. What else do I eat? Those are like the stereotypical American
Yeah.
things.
I eat that. I love apple pie.
Yeah.
I love McDonald's.
But for her, right? So she's considered American, but really, right? Her family is from Europe, right? So what I like to hear from white people is like, I'm from German descent, I'm from Irish descent, Italian, something like that. I feel like a lot of times they kind of forsake their heritage.
Yeah.
And just say, which is fine, because if you've been living here 5 generations in America, something like that, I understand that.
I think there's a balance though, right? Because at some level, I think the thing that makes us like great, that the thing that makes like life interesting is that like spicing of culture within the bigger melting pot of culture, right? Because I feel like my life would be pretty like boring or devoid of something without like Bengali culture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I feel like our weddings would be less fun.
Yeah.
I feel like things like that we celebrate, like Eid and stuff like that, right? Like we'll never have that affinity for like regular other holidays the way that we do for Eid, just because of like
Hey, for me, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Thanksgiving to me is one of the most American holidays, straight up.
I think like
I mean, alright, so
the holiday
so
itself is
we can get
beautiful.
into the semantics of
Yeah.
but I'm talking about strictly just saying since the 1900s.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
pushing
no.
aside the semantics of it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, it's a very football family, and food.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it is like I love seeing this like when you go to like Jackson Heights in New York, which is like super Bengali, like it's like a little Bangladesh, right? But it's like a street in Jackson Heights. It's super cool seeing during like Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah.
Seeing like halal turkeys, right?
Yeah.
Like as like like every single like brown grocer has it, and I'm like, that's insane, right? And I think the funniest part is like watching like brown like aunties cook turkeys, right? Because you like, as much as you want, like you'll never just copy the American dish 100% because it's not in our blood, right? Like they'll throw in some like paprika, like they'll throw in random like spices on the turkey.
See, for us, it's like the cousins, like the.
Oh really?
Whoever was born here, we take care of that side, you know.
The turkey
The turkey, that's us, you know.
Like
my boy's Sungit, yo. Shout out Sungit.
Really?
My cousin, you know, hey, he's about to propose next week. So.
Oh, congrats.
Yeah, hopefully Steph doesn't see this.
It will come out. Nah, so like I think that's super cool.
Speaking of which, he's about to marry a Puerto Rican girl though. So.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yeah.
Interesting. How do you think that's? Or I mean, I'm assuming
it's
your family
fun.
already knows and all that.
Yeah,
played
I mean,
out.
yeah, it's good.
It's good.
Fun,
Good. Like.
And yeah, they'll have some beautiful kids.
Yeah.
Sure, some brown and brown, you know. It's like,
yeah. No. I think like seeing like. I don't know. It's like I guess like it's an ego thing, right? I think seeing people outside of like regular culture, like, kind of like fuse with our culture is kind of like nice to see, right?
Yeah.
Like.
I mean, you honestly learn how similar your different cultures are.
Yeah.
Like Hispanic culture and Indian culture.
Yeah.
You know, when they come here, they're like, oh, samosa. That's just you know, empanada with potatoes.
Like, yeah.
You know, like,
it's like super similar things that you just like make correlations
like,
with,
you know,
right?
Hey, honestly, they just love getting hammered at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's everything.
Whether it's like salsa music or it's bhangra. Like,
everything like, and I think that's a human conditioning thing. There's two ways of looking at it, and like everything else in life, right? Is you could look at the straight differences, right? Be like, okay, like you said, like the empanadas and samosas, right? Like it's like, oh wow, like it's kind of different, right? Like it has like different texture, like whatever. But at the same time, like you see the similarity, right? It's like, oh, like it's just like a potato-based like flour dish, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like they do that on the other
honestly,
side of the world too.
If you really look at it, we're all just so similar. It's just we have different ways of getting to the same needs, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, so you know, like the stereotypical like redneck, right? What we would say like down south.
Yeah.
You know, having a farm.
Yeah.
Having your own arms. You know, growing your own crop. Just living like a nice, very relaxed life. Like my dad was doing that.
That's regular villagers.
My dad was on the farm, like you know, harvesting the sugar cane, tobacco, all this, right? Like you know, straight farm, like.
Yeah, so like, I think that's why like, when we like compare like backgrounds, like I always say like immigrant children or like children of immigrants rather have like they connect really quickly, right? Like we connected really quickly because like our parents like more or less went through the same journey, right? But when you really look at it, like people in the U.S. do that as well, right? There's plenty of stories of people who like grew up on a farm somewhere and then you know they went to college, whatever, right? And like they did larger, you know, they progressed, or if that's like I don't even want to use the word progress because that's not to say like working on a farm is degressing, right?
No, right. Yeah. Well, see, look, I was me and my dad, you know, we were driving to Chicago for my uncle's retirement party, and so you have to drive through Indiana, right, from Ohio, and you know, we're going through the fields, some local roads in Indiana, and I was just talking to my dad, and I was saying, you know, wouldn't you just love to live here? It's like just like Anora. Anora is our village in India, in Gujarat, right? You know, wouldn't you just love to live here? And he's like, yeah, I would love to. This is ideal. You know, I love Jersey. I love living in a big city, but like this feels like home, right? But the thing is, what he told me is, you know, we'll never fit in here.
100%.
Like, well, like, you know, it's such a small town. He said, so we were talking. The only way I think you could fit in if you were like a town doctor, the only doctor in a nearby, because this is a very small, isolated town, but it's nice, beautiful houses. The only way is, you know, you really have to go and, you know, go out of your way to connect with these people.
Yeah, and like to be honest, like that reminds me of like a Prasad story of like living in like a small town in Pennsylvania and just like facing like ridiculous amounts of like racism, like right, and it sucks because it's like those places will never like progress in that mindset until they meet more people, but more people of color, but those people of color will never actually go to those locations to like educate those people.
I talk to like a lot of my black friends, right? They say, you know, when you're living in kind of a primarily white area and you're like one of the few black families there, right? You have to really be active. You have to let people know who you are. I live here. You know, it's like Because otherwise, people
You get
don't-
lost, yeah.
No, the way like people's minds work, stereotypes are gonna think something is not right here.
Oh yeah.
And so people have to be active. Let them know, like we're a good neighbor. We're like you have to be like a model citizen. Almost.
Yeah, I think
Otherwise, people will assume the worst.
I don't think it's an assumption of the worst. I think it's a comfort level, right? So like just
And it's not just white people. That's just like honestly for black people, it's a lot of other races too.
what?
And
Oh, yeah.
And honestly, see that's the thing. That's another big thing. That racism is just like from white people to minorities.
It's throughout. Yeah,
Any race. can be
100%.
racist.
100%.
Which is people debate that though. People say like a minority can't be racist, which is not, I don't agree with that at all.
I think I think just like observing, right? I know plenty of like I've heard it too, right? And there's a hilarious like Russell Peters like segment, right? Why like Chinese people and like Indian people can't do business, right?
Yeah.
Like, but like when you really break it down, what he's really saying is that they actually can't do business together, right? Because there is inherent racism among these like communities regardless, right? Like realistically, you're still checking off the Asian box, right? Like whether you're Indian or you're from China, right?
East Asian.
You're East Asian, South Asian. You're still checking off Asian, right? But we still have that level of racism, mistrust between each of our respective like segments of that, which goes to show you like a lot, right?
Yeah.
And once again, like a little bit of probably self-hate in there, right? Because I've seen plenty of people avoid doing business with a specific person of like a specific ethnicity to do business with somebody who's like white, just because potentially they're more trusting.
Yeah.
Right. For example, like my dad, like when he does like I know like plenty of like families who do this, right? But my dad would take out like my dad has like a lot of like accountants, lawyers, right?
No.
But a lot of the times like you'll look for the white lawyer, right? Because you assume you assume he's better, right?
Yeah.
Rather than like, and honestly like
my dad just did the same thing.
Really? To go white lawyer? Yeah, but here's the crazy thing. Like we see every day plenty of like South Asian like brothers and sisters like going on getting law degrees from prestigious colleges, right?
Yeah.
Probably top of their classes, right? Things like that. And yet we still look for validation in other places through little things like that.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that you go further and like you kind of just like try to segment your way away from that. I think it's telling, but it's also I think like a comfort thing, right? Like you want to believe that you've escaped your bubble, and I think there's a balance, right? Like you don't want to just be surrounded by your own like people all the time, right? Because then you never hear other outside opinions, but at the same time you don't want to just feel like the need to like leave, right? Which I think we saw in high school too at some level, like even our friend group, right? I think our friend group did a pretty good job in balancing, right? But if you look around, like, have you ever heard of like de facto discrimination opposed to, segregation, de facto segregation opposed to the other, I forgot what the other kind is called.
No.
So like, de facto is I think the way it's like, it's not like legally segregated, right? But it's just how it is, right? So if you looked at
I think we see that. I think anywhere you go, you'll see people kind of segregating amongst themselves.
Yeah.
It's not for better or for worse. It's just people are gonna automatically migrate and flock towards those who are most similar to them.
Yeah.
And it's like, what I like to see then is those different groups are gonna, intermingle and and try to so like over here, right? There's like a large brown group of OSU people, but we have a bunch of white people. I mean, it's a predominantly white university, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course, they're gonna be there. And a lot of the time it's the more they get to know you, the more they want to know about your culture, the more they appreciate it.
Agreed. And I think there's been a little bit of laziness in terms of the education of our culture, not just by us, right? But like larger media, like in general, right? Like if you see the spread of certain cultures, right? Like people love Italian food here, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not actually from Italy, but you love Italian food, right? And we know certain cultural Italian things, right? But that's from them spreading like their culture consistently throughout their time here, right?
Yeah.
A lot of pride in Italian culture,
Exactly.
right? We also grew up in a very Italian like town, right?
Originally like
Originally
like
Italian
and
town.
German, like that's
Yeah,
it.
like our town was dominated by Italians and Germans, right? But we don't necessarily see that type of I guess like pride or like spreading of our culture consistently, right? I know when you came here, right, you joined like the OSU.
Yeah, like more like South Asian.
More South Asian organizations,
yeah.
right? But at Rutgers, like it's interesting because like I feel like there's a little bit of self-hate in that too, right? People, people will speak down upon like, oh, like why are you on like the Indian organization, or why are you on like an Indian fraternity, or like there's like a little bit of segmentation even with that, right? Like obviously, like I have friends in all types of organizations, but I feel like the same respect that we hold other like fraternities or organizations, we don't hold for our own, right? For example, just like a really basic, I don't know if you've seen this, is that like I've heard so many people outside of South Asian Greek life at Rutgers like speak down upon like their process, what they go through to get there, right? But I've heard those same people celebrate the process which the like black fraternity, Spanish fraternities go through, right? And I'm just like, I without knowing all the details, right? More or less, they're modeled after each other, right?
Yeah, I'll be honest, black initiation is best.
Yeah, I mean, but
yeah, when they're stepping down south, man.
Oh yeah, no, like probate and stuff, yeah, 100%. But I've seen people like avoid going to like South Asia, like probates and stuff like that, just so that they didn't. I don't know, for whatever
because it feels
reason.
corny. It feels like
It's interesting though.
Yeah.
Like did I tell you about like the little bit of like pushback I got from like my own fraternity? No. So I don't know if you saw, like I got like my like class that I pledged this semester, I got them like line jackets, right? Like the fraternity didn't pay for it, like each of my like pledges paid for it themselves, right? And it was crazy the amount of like kickback that I got from my own fraternity. Yeah. Not like the majority of the fraternity, right? Very small segmented group, right? Yeah. Led by, you know, like people like
Hey, name drop right
I'm not gonna name drop. We're past that. But it's
a little push, you know.
It was insane. Not like, I mean, they know. Like I made myself clear. I was like, all right, like I don't care. But it was crazy seeing like that pushback. It's like, wow, like you're hating this like article of clothing just because it reminds you of a South Asian organization. Like it's insane to me. It's interesting to see that, but I wanted to move on to something that I saw this week and I like shared with you, and it was insane to me. And you going into the med field, right? I wanted to discuss this with you. So the link of the video that we're about to discuss is going to be in the bottom, so you can definitely check it out. I highly encourage everyone to check it out. But more or less, the video depicts this doctor of South Asian descent. I'm not sure where she's actually from, right? But she speaks about racism within healthcare and how people of color are mistreated because they're people of color.
I think especially in this situation, number one, the person in question was a black female.
Yes.
Black females also tend to be the most discriminated against.
And
there's plenty of studies.
Okay.
Plenty of studies that,
So, basically the video depicts on how this woman who's being discriminated against was being incorrectly treated because they didn't take her condition seriously. She basically had all of the...
Yeah, so what happened was they attributed her... She came in complaining about some chest pains, right?
Yeah.
And what was happening was she was having small heart attacks. She had some kind of valve issue in her heart, and they attributed like the chest pains to like her histrionics. That because she's a black woman, she's just kind of exaggerating, right? And they wouldn't treat her. They just say take some ibuprofen, do this, do that, right? And that one nurse or whatever healthcare provider she was, right? She said.
I think she was a doctor, maybe.
Doctor, yeah. So she said, let me, set up an EKG, right? Let me monitor your heart. And they could tell every time she would cough, small,
blips in the heart.
Yeah, small heart attacks were occurring. And they didn't treat her at all.
Yeah, and it's insane because when you really think about it, like the studies show, like people of like South Asian descent, people of color are at a much higher risk of heart attacks just because of like diet, all of that history, but it goes to show you that like I worked like finances for like a doctor's office, and even there like you see like a little bit of just like I wouldn't call it like racism, but just a little bit of like that. There needs to be like a word for that, like, you know what I'm talking about, like that word between like racism, but like just that a little bit of shade before racism, right? Like where you don't want to call somebody a racist, but they're showing racist like qualities. Like I saw a lot of that, like just working like in the healthcare like provider's office. I was just like, wow, like the insurance companies like really don't care, right?
Yeah, I mean it's all about money.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, honestly, with them, right? You know, so I've worked as a scribe in a physical therapy clinic, right? And yeah, the way it's set up, honestly, you know, it's a business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They want their money no matter what. They're gonna maximize the profit.
100%. That's why you get those multiple visits.
Exactly. So right, recently, you know, I had to go to the ER with my aunt, right? Every single item that's being used is being scanned for the bill later. You know, and it's very quick.
It's yeah, and I've seen those bills. They're ridiculous.
So you know, as a healthcare provider, you have to be able to balance the fact that yes, it is a business side. You need the money for all of the medical techniques. You need the money to pay the doctors because you're investing your whole life. But at the same time, you know, you have to make sure that it's patient care first,
and then
you know, the money comes after.
And the money, here's the thing, the money will eventually come in. Like insurances will pay, right?
Yeah,
like regardless, but it's insane to see. Like I've seen like doctors, which is insane. But like think of their patients as like, oh, like this is like a gold mine because they pay their copay right away.
I mean,
and, like,
we see what's happening right now with the opioid epidemic, right?
Yeah.
And you know, pretty much pharmaceutical companies are going up to doctors. We'll pay you to prescribe this medication for, even if it's remotely like, you know, related to pain, just prescribe this. Just giving like loads of money, loads of cash. All of them, minor prosecution, nothing. Slap on the wrist, fine.
Yeah.
Go on your way.
And it goes.
And you know, like we see all these people that are now taking, you know, heroin, and you know, all these more stronger, you know, opioid-based compounds, right? So pretty much, you know, a little chemistry right here. The reason why like methamphetamine and heroin is, you know, much more addicting. They just add more non-polar groups, right? And those things, it's just easier to get into the brain. So those things, you know, within seconds they're in your brain, and you can become addicted instantly. So you're just adding more CH groups,
which is
non-polar groups, and yeah, it's just super easy to go into the brain.
It's an interesting segue, like that I want to get into, which is like medicine, like South Asian, like what South Asian medicine is, right?
Yeah.
Comparatively to like just like what the medicine like attitude dash mindset is here in the U.S. Right? So I grew up, like I'm sure you did too, like home remedies that would just like kick ass, right? Like still do, right? Like I always have like congestion, right? I kind of feel congested right now.
Yeah, me as well.
But I remember like throughout like every time like I go to the doctor with my congestion, right? Like it's like just prescribe this, like do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a problem within itself, antibiotics.
Yeah, 100%.
It's telling you super bugs.
100%, and like I'm super against like just like taking medication. Like I try not to take Tylenol for any like pain unless it's like crazy. But so I went to Bangladesh for my cousin's wedding, and like I was having ridiculous like congestion, and my one of my like family members, he's like, here, do this. He puts like little like like you've seen like the little menthol crystals in like boiling hot water, right? And then he's just taking the steam, right? I've never felt like more relieved.
A lot of those
ever.
like, you know, or a lot of those herbs like you know, camphor, you know, menthol, all these different things. Even like turmeric. You know, when you have what's it called, haldi.
Yeah.
Harder. We call it harder.
Yeah, harder, haldi.
Yeah, everything is different, you know.
Yeah.
The rest of India.
Which another like little segue, right? You see the exploitation of like South Asian like products being by big American,
you know,
big American companies.
A lot of people, I think that's a big topic if you want to discuss.
Huge, like a huge thing. Like so, like it's funny. So like I just bought like a charcoal like teeth whitener, right? Because that's like huge now, right? And I showed it to my dad, and my dad eats like pan, right? So like he always had, like you know what I mean. But my dad has always had this like little like powder thing, right? And he takes like a little wooden brush, right? Puts it in the powder and then does it, and then like all the pan like stuff, like just his teeth look super white, right? And then I showed my dad the charcoal, right? He's like, I hope you realize like that's just this, right? That's just like literally this, right? And I paid like $20 for my charcoal whitener, right? He's like, yo, this is like the cheapest, like this is what villagers just use in South Asia, right? Because it's super easy, right? It's probably like the equivalent of like $1 in the United States, right? And I'm just like, wow, that's insane, right? And then you see like a lot of these like, I actually saw like a couple of girls on my Instagram feed like talking about this. Like I guess like rose water is like a big thing in like in the U.S. now, right?
A lot of things.
Really.
The use of turmeric has like skyrocketed.
Turmeric, right? Like, but rose water has consistently been a thing throughout like like South Asia like forever, right? Like moms have been giving it to their daughters since like the beginning of time, basically.
You know, you go down to Trism, get a turmeric latte.
Can you?
Yeah, actually, it's not good though.
Turmeric latte.
Turmeric and water, yo. It's like, Arthur is better.
Yeah, but you see these like little things being like boxed in and then like being sold for like massive amounts of profits, right? And obviously like there's no way to like patent it or like pay somebody out, right? But you see, and even within that, right? You see like younger like South Asian like girls, right? Like buying those products instead of like just get it from like the Indian market in your town, depending on where you live, right? For like $15 cheaper on average, right? It's interesting to like just like observe that and see like where that is going, and which is the reason that even like this like clothing line now exists, right? Which is why we're even doing this, right? Is to like eventually, not the goal, right? But the goal isn't to like just have like all South Asian like businesses around you, right?
Yeah.
But it's to have more of them, right? Because if there's an opportunity for South Asians to make money, right? Then there should be that opportunity, and that opportunity should be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Which I think we talked about this like a couple of weeks ago when I first got into Ohio, right? So like if you look at the statistic, right? Like usually the biggest obstacle in order to gain, like we always talk about like generational wealth in our own private conversations, right? The obstacle for like real wealth is capital, right? Like you can't start a business without some sort of capital, right?
Yep.
So it's like a real interesting disparity. So I think I saw somewhere that Asians in general, right, have the highest median level income, right? Meaning we have like the most, like I think I forgot what the number is. It's like it's in the 70,000s, right? Highest median level income of all races. But then look at the percentage of millionaires that are Asians, right? It's literally like 1% or something. Like it's like very like the disparity is ridiculous, and obviously like Asians like.
I think that trend is gonna change as our generation goes. I think a lot of our family members are very family oriented, number one.
Yeah.
And for them, sometimes they'll, forsake trying to expand a business and go that route and just maximize profit. Just, they'll stay at the median.
Yeah.
Because, they really care about family. That's what I think, at least. I think with our generation, that number will expand.
But I think that those risks need to eventually start being made, right?
Yeah.
But like I don't think that's within like our culture, you know what I mean? And maybe it's because like you said, like a lot of our parents are like first, like like they just immigrated here, right? So they were just trying to like survive, right? Like just trying to be like provide as much as they could in the short amount of time. And obviously they came at massive
which is interesting. Like for me, like I've seen my parents from like now we're upper middle class family. But like when I was born, right, and the way my parents came up, you see like my dad, working odd jobs, working at Arby's, working at a beer factory as like a security guard, and things like that. And then working their way up. Like my mom, she didn't have a bed for the first 6 months she was in America. She was sleeping on the ground. She would have like food mailed to her from India, and things like that. And you see that within the same lifetime, within like my age, or like 20 years on this earth, my parents have progressed like from that to living comfortably.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
It's insane, right? And it's amazing. But you see that and you're like, wow, like. Our parents like did that. Your parents did that, right?
Yeah.
With so many disadvantages, right? Coming to a country where they didn't like English is not their first language, right?
Exactly.
And then you kind of see like the things around you, and you're like, wow, like I hope for our generation, right? Like we see that, and we're like, wow, like we need to push that needle like further, right? Because where I started in life, right, or where you started in life, is light years ahead of where our parents like started, right? So if at the end of the day, like, and I'm not saying like money is the best parameter of this, right? But let's just use money as the object, right? If let's say like your parents like make like 150, right, and then you go through all of the struggle, right? You grew up here, you got all the advantages necessary, and you only progressed to that 150, right? You realistically, in my opinion, right? If I did that, I'd be like, damn, like I'm a failure.
100%.
I'm a failure.
Yeah, I think we talked about this too in back in English class.
Yeah.
I think Burgess.
Yeah, I would be like, wow, like I'm a failure, right? Like my dad like struggled and he made this amount, right? Like he went through like everything. He brought realistically his 8 brothers and sisters to America and still accomplished that, right? And I'm just like, damn, like I didn't have any worries. Like I didn't ever wonder where my next meal was coming from, right? Like, and if that's the end like result, I'm like, damn, like something happened, right? Like I didn't maximize my potential, right? realistically, our parents probably like maximized what they could do with the tools that they were given, with the life that they were assigned to, right? It's interesting, but you see that and you're like, wow, like I need to like step my shit up like all the time, like.
Because I mean, they're aware of what life is.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're aware of what life is like when you're not comfortable.
Yeah.
For us, you know, we think we know what failure is, but we really haven't seen like what it's like
Real
to be, you know, like not failure, but like not having what we have. We've never experienced that fully, you know.
Agreed.
So like we can't appreciate the hustle as much as they can.
Yes.
For them, it's in them now.
Yeah.
For us, sometimes like I mean, I guess you know all of us we hustle, right?
Yeah.
But, like it's not as.
I also think it plays into our appreciation of money. Like I, honestly, like I am an occasional splurger, right?
Yeah.
But like the way like our parents, like we talked about this, like right, like our brown dads where they wouldn't buy anything because they'd be like, oh, we just had McDonald's last week, we can't afford McDonald's again, right? At the same time, they would just make big purchases. But
well, I mean, it's just like, you know, like no fast food because you know we have food at home.
Yeah.
Hey, you know,
save that money.
$2, all right, it's nothing, but hey, $2.
$2, right? And like that frugality comes from because like they actually have to work.
Yeah,
like you said, your dad worked at Arby's. My dad worked at I think Dwayne Reed for like the first couple of years he was in the U.S. right. And I'm just like, wow, like he drove a cab, like did all of that, right? So like he really knows that value, right? I remember when I first started working, my dad was all like, yep, so what did you have for lunch today, right? And I think I had like Chipotle or something, right? And then he was all like, all right, so like how much did you how many hours did you work? And then I was like, and this was back when I was working like a minimum wage job, right? He's like, basically you just didn't work that hour because you just got Chipotle. Yeah. Right? He's all like, that's like you make $8 and you just spent $9 on Chipotle. Yeah. Because I got guac. I got guac because I was feeling like a splurge.
Hey, no meat in it's free.
Huh?
No meat in it's free.
Yeah, no, nah, but I got meat too. And he's just like, so like think about it, multiply that over a span of 5 days, right? Yeah. That's 9 times.
Hey man, even the summer, you know,
9 times 5, that's 40 in the summer, especially.
Yeah, we spend a lot of money.
9 times 5, like it's $45 a week, right? And that's how he used to break it down to me, and then I was just like, damn, this dude is cheap, right? But then I realized he's not cheap. He's just appreciating that value of that money that he worked for. It's insane. But I want to segue into a less serious topic, but still has highlights of.
Hey, I really want to go back to the cultural appropriation thing.
Yeah, and I think I want to get into that with like our next topic of discussion, which is we're obviously both huge hip hop heads.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So I want to talk about hip hop, South Asians and hip hop, where that balance is, and just that in itself. So the first thing I want to talk about is like something I've been discussing with a few of my friends in private, which is that. So everyone's seen that like Nav has started to like blow up, right? Shout out to Nav, my man of South Asian descent.
Yeah, hey, I'm not the biggest fan though. I'll be honest.
So this goes into like a bigger like thing for me, right? Which is like, why are like I get like okay, like taste is taste, right? Yeah. Like I personally like I enjoy some of Nav's music, but like I wouldn't say like I'm the hugest fan, but at the same time like we need to somewhat celebrate that. He's breaking down a lot of barriers for a lot of kids. Like a lot of kids. Yeah. Right? Like I don't think like
hey, for me, never sacrifice the art. For me, Nav, whatever. How do you say it?
Nav, I think.
Yeah, like, right. So, I'm never about, sacrificing the art. If you have to give up your art.
Yeah.
Like, so for me, I don't enjoy his music. I don't think it's, particularly forward moving. Mm-hmm. I think it just is what it is. Yeah. He found his, little niche there. Yeah. Kind of took what was before him. Mm-hmm. Has the, the luxury of being under the Weeknd and being in the Toronto scene. But at the same time, there are a lot of dope other Indian artists like Ani Khan from Queens, right? Or you see like Riz Ahmed and
Sweatshop Boys.
Sweatshop Boys. Yes. Like that's real art.
Yeah, that's actually where I wanted to.
It's not even the fact that they're incorporating the Indian elements, and the South Asian elements, right? But it's they don't forsake the art.
So
see, like for me, like
that's where I
would say we're real
to
hip hop heads, right? Yeah. Versus like Nav is like I don't know.
But
I understand that people enjoy.
Yeah, but I think. So like let's talk about Riz Ahmed and the Sweatshop Boys, right? Yeah. So like I think they won a Grammy actually, or they won.
No. They didn't win anything.
Huh?
He won an award for his show.
No, they won some sort of award.
No, I don't think so.
Yo, they're not somebody look it up. Now, can you look it up? Oh damn, your phone's over there. All right, well, Subin.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, can you look it up? Alright. Can you look up if Rizz Ahmed and the Sweatshop Boys won anything?
No, they don't win a Grammy.
No, they won something. But anyway, I think their first album won something.
Okay.
Sweatshop Boys, yeah. So like just going into that, right? Yeah, like that's a little segue. You didn't think I would do that, right? Just,
It feels like Hot 97, you know?
It was like Hot 97. But yeah, so like the Sweatshop Boys, right? Like that's an amazing. And for those of you who haven't heard their music, like definitely go out and check it out, right?
And Rizz Ahmed, he was
Rizz
in Star
Ahmed.
Wars.
Yeah.
The night of.
The
Crazy.
night of, yeah, huge, blowing up. I think he obviously Sweatshop Boys is, I think it's a little bit bigger in England, right?
Yeah.
And like European
Well, what's
markets.
his name? I forget the other guy's name.
The other half of Sweatshop Boys.
Yeah. I forget his name, but he was in That's Racist, the band.
Yeah.
But he's super dope.
Yeah. So like, but you don't see like, because realistically, a lot of like hip hop music is because of. It's about telling your own story, right? And by telling your own story, you're telling a lot of other people's stories, right? Drake line, I told my story, made history, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot about telling your own story. So my question to you is that why don't we listen, like as general listeners, right? Like why aren't we listening to people who are telling versions of our own story, right?
I don't know if he's necessarily telling our story though.
Who?
No, I don't think he is. You know?
No, I'm not saying. I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking more so like Rizz Ahmed and Sweatshop Boys, because I think they're definitely telling our stories,
sure,
right? Just like the things that I know they have that song about like the going through like PSA, TSA, right? And I'm just like, wow, that's like super accurate, right? And I'm just like, wow, like I get it. Like obviously, like we all like to go out, like go to the club, listen to like but at some level. It's like, wow, like these people are telling our stories, and isn't that the reason? At least that's the reason that I listen to music, right?
Yeah.
That identification with like, wow, this is how I'm feeling, right? I know people say that about Drake all the time, like, oh, like, damn, like he's saying exactly what I'm feeling right now, right? I'm just like, wouldn't like somebody of your background and ethnicity be able to tell your own story as best as possible?
Honestly, I've never felt like a show has done that until Master of None.
Really?
Like Master
I haven't
of None.
watched.
So like, all right. So number one, of course, there's been shows I've loved and related to, but like when I saw that show, I was like, wow. So this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like it's so relatable. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
even Atlanta is also really relatable in a lot of ways.
Really?
Even though it's definitely a more black oriented show.
Yeah.
But it's so I definitely feel like that's another topic I think. I feel like when you're brown, right, in the United States, and you come here, right, and you have your own culture from your parents, right?
Yeah.
But you need to find also your own like little niche within the United States based off of what culture is already here. Like black culture is kind of like the first thing, like like when you're there, bro, it's like they throw a hand to you, like, and you kind of become assimilated into that culture, and like hip hop becomes part of you.
I think hip hop is a very open and accepting culture,
because hip hop. So before now how it's very saturated in the mainstream. But hip hop in general is about like being different, being from the outside, but still like having your
telling that story. Yeah,
telling that story.
That like, oh, nobody wants me, but like I'm still gonna gonna be me and
like that's so relatable for us.
Yeah, 100%.
Like in growing up, right, and I see my cousins, like listening to that stuff, and like that's how you get into it, right?
Exactly. And I think like on just like a larger point, I think all these issues that we have spoken about, hopefully with the correct movements by our generation, right, will get better in terms of like at least like mainstream media. Like you see certain people start to break now, right, and it's all building upon a foundation, and hopefully like in like 5-10 years we're further along than we were now, right? And you do see that, right? Before, the only I guess like brown comedian realistically before was like Russell Peters, right?
Yeah.
OG, right? But now you see the Hassan Minaj's, you see the Ziz's, right? You see who's the Kumail, the guy who did the Big Sick.
Yeah.
Which amazing movie, by the way. Speaks a lot. Like I think that was one of the most I think that was the most proud I felt watching like a movie that's depicting like what it's like to be like brown and having like dating somebody outside your like ethnicity. I was just like, wow, that's like super accurate, and hilarious movie as well. But I think like over time, like these things hopefully will be fixed with like the correct like due diligence by our generation. And I think right now we're like I know Hassan Minaj actually mentioned this like in like a Hot 97 interview, I think, where he talked about how we're kind of in like a brown renaissance right now, right?
Yeah.
Like Aziz popping right now. Hassan I think Hassan Minaj is like
Hey, funny
homecoming.
enough, none of them are Hindu though.
Really?
Yeah.
What's Aziz? I have no idea.
He's Muslim.
Aziz is Muslim. I did not know that. Yeah.
And Ross Peters is Christian.
But
I mean, it doesn't matter.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Brown,
Like, it's still brown.
Yeah.
I think it's like interesting to see like that. Like I think Hasan Minaj's like homecoming, like the stand-up that he did.
very
Like I think
Oh, yeah, for sure.
super relatable to us, right? But I think that was like the most I've seen like people like really take pride in like
Oh, definitely.
like a piece, right? Like we're like wow, like yeah, like you know what I mean? Like yeah, like Hasan's describing everything correctly,
Yeah.
right? Like people putting it up on their stories. It was like the first like cultural phenomenon trend that I've seen. Where I was like wow, like like all of like brown Instagram and brown Twitter are really getting on this, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously like you have like your like YouTube vloggers who are like killing it out there. Damn, forgetting. Just Rain is killing it.
Yeah.
Superwoman's killing it, right? Like,
She's
and
really confident. She's like getting.
Superwoman.
She's in what, Fahrenheit 451?
I think so, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, no, I know she's like getting into like acting, like she's with The Rock all the time,
Yeah.
right? And like it's amazing to see because it's like wow, like these people are gonna build upon things. So
Yeah.
now like nothing is inaccessible to like our people, right? It's like wow, we can touch this, we can touch this, and hopefully, brown parents will eventually see that, be like okay,
Yeah.
like because before the argument was like yo, who looks like you that's doing that, right? Like how like you know what I mean? Like oh, like you want to be an NBA player, right? Are there any brown NBA players, right?
No.
Like, all right, so like quit playing basketball.
I mean, there are, but like
Yeah,
not like a 6'3" dude.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
like 6'11", like.
I think the Kings drafted somebody.
Yeah, I think it was one of the Bullers.
Huh?
One of the Bullers.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like somebody like
Yeah, no,
like
no.
Jeremy Lin. Jeremy Lin, that was wild, man.
Oh,
that
he
was
was
like
saying yeah.
that month just watching MSG.
Yeah.
Like New York paused.
I think
just
yeah.
to watch.
Just to watch Jalen. Like,
At Toronto when he hit that game winner.
Which one
Toronto
was
was
that?
going nuts, man.
was that the
When he was like, he said, everyone get out.
oh yeah, get out the way.
Get out the
Yeah. He's like, I got this,
Yeah.
right? And no, I do remember that. We just watched that recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's insane, and like hopefully like those will eventually lay the grounds
Hey.
for more and more.
Definitely a
People.
little prediction right here. So maybe either our kids or our kids' kids, that generation will have plenty of I think big time athletes.
Really?
Indians. So number one, we're all definitely getting taller. Our children are definitely getting taller. Like
Over time?
Like
Is that a scientific thing?
I mean, it's an observation,
It's an
Are you
observation?
taller than your dad?
I am.
I am as well. I think pretty much everyone I know is taller than their dad.
Actually, like, spoke to my like cousin about this, like, who is a doctor, and he was saying that we're more inclined to become taller, right?
Yeah.
Because the diets that our parents grew up on were a
Yeah.
lot less well-rounded
Yeah.
than like our specific diets.
We have like we're over
nutrition.
Yeah,
over
nutrition is like over
yeah.
top.
But like realistically, like our parents weren't like eating the best, right? Like they didn't really understand, like you know what I mean, like
Yeah, the science.
yeah, the signs, right? Like my dad's diet, like even now, like a lot of it is just like, all right, like rice, some sort of curry, chicken.
Hey, honestly,
like,
yeah,
you know
but
what I mean?
honestly, like that,
Fish.
it's a very like having a very consistent diet is very
Yeah.
good for you. Like
So-
my dad is just like, yo, get your
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Yo, like we went to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And we rented out like a kind of like a small apartment, like how this is.
Yeah.
There was a kitchen in there. My dude brought his spices, bro. Brought his spices. Got some rice from the store. Made khichdi, shock there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, like no, not playing. Like he's
Yeah.
gotta have his diet. Like
Yeah, no.
like if he eats anything, I mean, he'll go to a restaurant and stuff.
Yeah.
But we're just chilling at home. He's gotta eat that.
Yeah, no.
Which I respect. I respect.
Yeah, no, I get that. Like 100%.
Yeah.
Like I've seen like my parents like do that all the time. Like my mom, like, because now that I'm like cooking for myself, right? She like begs me to go out and get rice, right? She's like,
yeah.
oh,
Hey,
like,
how about roti shop?
yeah, she's all like my parents are like super funny, and my cousin always makes fun of his mom, right? Like it's like, oh, like if you don't eat bath, it's not a meal, right?
Yeah,
It's not like
no, exactly.
they don't even count that
Yeah.
shit. It's like you could have had like the biggest like pasta dish. It's like was there bath in there?
Yeah.
Like no. It's so super interesting and interesting prediction. We'll see. We'll come back to it.
So
I think
on top of that, so I wasn't
Yeah.
finished with that.
Oh,
right?
okay,
On
you have
top
more
of-
reasons.
Yeah, no, on top of that, right? So look, what age did you start, playing basketball?
I started like super young because I was fat and that's how I
Yeah.
that's how I lost weight. I played basketball outside like all the time.
But see, like when we have kids, right? They're gonna have a basketball at a super young age. They're just gonna be honestly like I think I see a bunch of Indian kids.
No,
They'll be dribbling. They'll have their left hand down. These things they'll be playing sports at a very young age.
Yeah, no, I see that too.
And they'll
Yeah.
learn from their parents as well.
100%. No, like I saw like my younger cousin like Ishan, right? He is I think like 11 now, right?
Yeah.
And like it's crazy like how athletic he is like
Yeah.
comparatively. I'm just like damn, like this kid like does things that at 11 that like I probably like started doing at like 16, right?
Yeah.
Like he's dribbling like behind his legs, right? Like I'm just like wow, that's like nasty. And like the cool thing is because like there's a significant age difference between me and him, right? I'm able to be like oh like really small things, right? Because realistically, how many parents actually like really know the game of basketball, right?
Yeah.
But just like playing it, you know certain things, right? Like you know, like okay, like hey Ishan, like move your hand over here, it'll get your shot better, right? But like you said, like our kids will have that benefit of having, like, you know what I mean, like that sort of guidance. Like my dad didn't know anything about basketball. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's never seen basketball like ever, right?
It's like my dad wanted me to play sports, but he didn't know like
how to do it, right? Yeah.
You know.
I remember like when we decided to like play like freshman year, like my dad was all like football. Like he obviously thought it was soccer at first, right? And then he like really didn't understand any aspect of the game, and like my dad was like super supportive and like would try to like somewhat like help, like, you know, he would drive me to practice, all of that. And but at the same time, like it's super hard like just picking up the game like this late in your life, where it's like damn. But yeah, thank you, man.